Hey guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoilery gush for A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. As I said, this video will have spoilers in it, so if you've not read this book, go ahead and check out my spoiler-free review, which will be linked on the screen. So I did mention this in my review, but I'm going to mention it again because there are a lot of different things going on with this book, and I feel like it is part of my discussion and I have to talk about it, but I was not expecting to like this book. I did not like ACOTAR at all. It was a 2-star read for me, and only 2 stars because of the last, 10% of the book. So I felt like Lucien and Rhys were the only 2 characters I really liked in that book, and I had a lot of issues with the lack of Feyre's agency, with Tamlin's abusive behavior, and just a lot of issues with it. And so I was fully expecting to not like this book at all. And I was wrong, and I'm stunned. So first I want to talk about Feyre's PTSD. I'm so glad that that was handled in this book because a lot of books and even a lot of movies and stuff, we do not have characters really experiencing the mental health issues that they will have from the horrible things they go through. So I really liked that we had Feyre and even some of the other characters, you have Rhys and you have Tamlin even, going through things and definitely feeling the repercussions of the events that happened under the mountain. But just having our protagonist have PTSD and panic attacks and stuff, and just even all the different issues with her and her lack of control and everything were amplified in this book, and I'm so grateful for that because like I said, it's so briefly mentioned in so many things, fantasy stories especially. So for it to be a major focus in this, I think was awesome and really important. I do want to talk about Tamlin as a character and his complete and utter destruction in this book. I kind of knew it was coming because Sarah J. Maas has a tendency to do this with her love interest. She's completely incapable of switching ships mid-series without destroying the previous love interest, which is something that just really bothers me. I didn't like Tamlin. I hated him from the first book, but I think it'd be even more complex and just better done if you had a character who's still not a bad person and you're falling out of love with that person, because not every relationship ends because this person that you're dating turns out to be a horrible human being. And I feel like every single time that she writes a different love interest in her series, she has to destroy the previous one and make them into this awful douchebag, and it's not realistic. Yes, sometimes that happens, but it doesn't happen every time, and it happens in every single one of her stories. So although I do know that book 1 Tamlin was an asshole and he had possessive and abusive tendencies, I know that. I talked about that in the first review. But just the fact that it was amplified to 150, and just he was made over and over, dragged through the mud and made into this horrible character. At first obviously we have him just being horribly abusive and locking her up, destroying the study when she says anything against him, taking away all of her agency, just trying to make her into this little baby making Fey bride against her will, and like I said, locking her up, destroying the study when he doesn't even know that she can shield. So he could have hurt her, and he just did the very stereotypical abusive behavior of, I'm so sorry, and I'll get better, and da-da-da-da. Cycle of abuse. And I saw that coming from a mile away, but like I said, he got continuously just destroyed, obviously, when we finally discover that he helped to kill, Rhysand's whole family. Douche. And then we have him teaming up with the king just to get Feyre back because he's that possessive, and selling out her whole family and selling out everybody and agreeing to just let him come trampling through the land just so he can get Feyre back. That's a whole new level of character destruction, okay? I hate him, and even I'm really? We're gonna go that deep with, him being that big of a douche? I'm here for it, because, I hate him, but also, okay. And I will say that his behavior did help to kind of facilitate Feyre making a complete 180 as a character within, 14 chapters or so, but I do feel that was very rushed, and, again, just made her character development just be a little off for me, because, the transition between book 1 and book 2 was just so sudden, and we have the characters just changing completely. We didn't have a gradual progression. And I do understand that the events that happened under the mountain were very traumatic, and that's gonna speed things up a bit. But we just had this very and now the characters are this way. Like I said, Feyre in book 1, I did not like. I hated Feyre in book 1. I have so many issues with her. But book 2, I adored her, and while I love that I adored her, and it's nice to have a protagonist that I liked, it's still kind of feels sloppy to me because it's I shouldn't make a 180 that quickly with a character. I should take some time to kind of be okay, she's changing, she's growing, she's developing, and it's and new character. She's a Fae now, and she's completely different. Completely new character, oh my gosh. But can we just talk about all of the Hades and Persephone wonderful elements in here? I made a tweet about this right at the beginning, but a lot of people, when I first mentioned this book and that it has Hades and Persephone elements, like a ton of people, not just one, like multiple people were like, it's not really Hades and Persephone, like don't get your hopes up, there's like barely any in there, like liars. Liars. You lied to me. First we have the obvious bargain of she has to spend some of her time in the Night Court. Like that's definitely the Hades Persephone, like 6 months in the underworld, 6 months above, you know, like that kind of thing. That's a very obvious Hades Persephone. That's why I knew that this book would have Hades Persephone elements in it. We also have her being a bride of spring. Persephone is a spring goddess. So we have this like very unassuming bride of spring. And Persephone, before she got taken to the underworld, was this very like innocent and unassuming character. She also had a very domineering mother figure, which could kind of be like the priestess. The very similar kind of relationship, who was kind of trying to like control her and command her and da-da-da-da-da. And she goes to the underworld. She gets taken by, you know, a dark prince kind of character, Hades, you know, Rhysand. She gets taken on her wedding, you know, swept away. He steals a bride of spring. That is Hades and Persephone, the myth at its core. And while we have Persephone in the underworld, she becomes a new, more badass person. She takes on the whole persona of being the queen of the underworld. She is just as badass, if not more badass, than Hades. So we have Feyre, who is Rhys's equal, and if not more powerful than him. It's Hades and Persephone. It brings me pain and it makes my knees weak. Then we have other little things that I could be kind of reading into, but I'm going to do it because I am Hades and Persephone trash. So we have Starfall, which is an event where the spirits are kind of migrating just in the Night Court. It sounds to me like the river Styx. It sounds to me kind of like, you know, Hades is ushering in these spirits to the underworld. Like, it's a migration of spirits. It's the underworld. And then we even have the Court of Nightmares, which could be kind of like a Tartarus. Again, it's underneath even like the underworld. It's a bad place. It's where all the monsters are, stuff like that. It speaks to me. We just have everybody thinking on the outside that Hades is this bad person and that he's just evil and da-da-da-da-da, when really like Hades has a lot of respect for his job and he's the most monogamous of all of the Greek gods, and him and Persephone have a really good relationship and everything. So all of this is wrapped up in this beautiful little fantasy package for me and gifted to my heart. And I'm so excited about it. So when Rhys first rescues Feyre and takes her just for their first couple of kind of visits or whatever, he does start to kind of help her and give her choices and give her back some of her agency. And that is my one little problem with this. Like I said in the first book, I felt like Feyre had zero agency whatsoever and she was always doing what men told her to do and she just couldn't even think for herself. So this book, we finally have her becoming her own person, making her own decisions, talking back, doing all that stuff, being a badass. But my little issue with that is that she didn't start doing that until the beginning when Rhys gave her permission to do so. You know, like he was the one that told her, like, you're more than this, you're not a servant, da-da-da, which is great. Like, he's a very supportive person, very supportive partner, stuff like that. But it still rubs me the wrong way that she couldn't snap out of that herself, that we had a whole book of her just having no agency, and we couldn't just have her kind of take that back. And I understand that she was like in a traumatized position, everything like that, but I just wanted her to like make that first move. So it still kind of burns me up a little bit that she wasn't the one to make that first move. But I do like that she became her own person. She was talking back to Rhys from the get-go pretty much. She was talking back to Tamlin. She, you know, she wrote him the letter being like, don't look for me. When Lucian came and tried to take her back, she was even like, I'm gonna stand up for all these people, you know, like look at how badass and like I'm part of the darkness now and like all this stuff that was so amazing. So I love all those things. And like I said, I love that Rhys did give her that kind of push that she needed, but at the same time, like I wanted it to more so come from her, and I wish that would have happened. So can we just talk about the Court of Dreams? My small little Fae children. I love them so much. So much. I love every single one of them. I actually just got an ask on Tumblr recently that was like, what's your favorite character from the Court of Dreams? I can't choose one. I can't choose one. They're all amazing. I would say a little bit that maybe of the 4 like side characters that are part of the Court of Dreams, that Azriel might be like a smidge above, but I can't even say that. Like, I can't even say that because like I love Mor and I love Amren and like I can't, and you can't have like him without Cassian, like I can't. But I do, like a part of me was like, you know, he's the little like kind of angsty shadow singer, like he's the spy, like he's everything that I love, but they're all amazing. And like Amryn is like this magical beast, like trapped in like her own world, and like this body, and like she can't get away, and she's been living for like so long, and she can just like destroy people by just like thinking it, and they just fall from the sky. That's amazing. And then we have Mor, who was like born in the Court of Nightmares and is just like, bitches, I'm here, and like I'm better than all of you, when she goes down there and sees her family because they're all trash and they've all just been through so much. I have a lot of feelings about them. Like, I have not been this invested in like a cast of characters probably since Truth Witch. Like every single character, Truth Witch / like Six of Crows, where I'm like, I love all of them. They're all my children. Like look at this. Like I had heart palpitations towards the end when like things were happening to them. Like I couldn't breathe. Like it was awful. Like I just need them to be okay. I need everyone to be okay. And I'm nervous for the last book because I feel like people might not be okay, but I need them to be okay. One other thing I did have a problem with is that I honestly do feel that Feyre is a special snowflake. Like, I do love her, and I love how badass she is, and that she has every single ability from like every single court. But you have to admit that that's like extremely OP. OP meaning overpowered. It's a lot. That's a lot. Like, I love her, but you can't have a character have every single ability from every single court. That's a lot. And I'm excited for that. Like, again, it gives her the Persephone vibe of like being so badass, da 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 da. That's so OP. Like, you can't be perfect at everything. And we barely had like any training montages. Like, the first training montage kind of happened like 400 pages in the book, which is way over halfway. And it just seemed like every time she was almost instantly good at every single ability. Like, she had no issues with anything like that. And it's kind of nice because on one side, like, I don't love long training montages. I'm not like a huge fan. Like, I just want them to know their stuff and like get on with it. So coming from me, this means something, because typically speaking, I'm just like, oh, like stop, like stop having all these issues, like come on. But you can't have, like in her other series with Throne of Glass, you can't have like a whole book basically dedicated to a character who actually used to know about these abilities, learning these abilities in all of Air of Fire, and then have this book where like Feyre knows everything instantly, and she never had abilities before. She was human. Like, do you see the disconnect there? Do you see the issue I have? Like, I love that she has the abilities in a way because it makes things really helpful and really easy, but it is like, it's too OP. You can't give a character every ability from every court and like everything is amazing. Like, it's too much. It's too much. I love her, but it's too much. Speaking of her agency, I feel like 2/3 of the way through the book, she did fully take back her own agency. When she was talking to Rhys and they were just talking about everything and them as a couple and everything, blah, 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 blah. And she actually told him, what about my story and what I want? So instead of thinking about everybody else, instead of kind of getting permission from everybody else, she finally says, what about me? What about what I want? What about my choices? And I'm just like, yes, finally. And like I said, I do kind of hate that Rhys was the one that pushed her there in the first place, that she didn't do that herself, but I'm so glad that she finally said that line of like, what about me? Amazing. So speaking of Rhys, and like I said, I can't even go into it because I even mentioned in the first review of the first book how much I loved him, but I adored him. So all of his backstory, everything about him, just all of his training, his wings, like everything about him is amazing, and I just adore him so, so much. And I just love the fact that, like, I knew from the first book that they were going to be mates. Like, I knew when he stumbled that was the mating bond. Like, I knew that going in. I think most people did. Like, everyone kind of saw that coming. But I love it so much. It is so Hades and Persephone. Like, Hades and Persephone are equals. They are monogamous and they're equals, and they're on the same level, and that's what they are. And it just speaks to me when you have a relationship like this where, like, no one is better than the other one, and, like, he treats her as an equal and she treats him the same way, and it's just, they have a really great dynamic. She is a high lady of the Night Court. Like, bless so much. Like, I knew it was gonna happen when, obviously, when Tamlin's like, there's no such thing as high ladies, blah, 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 I'm a douchebag. But, like, of course, and it just speaks to me on so many levels. It's my aesthetic. High lady of the Night Court. Like, can I have that job? I want it. I want to just do that. It sounds great. I do also love that Feyre actually realizes at one point that she kind of gives Rhys gold stars for things that should have been her inherent right. Like, she is like, wow, everything that he does is great, and it is great, but like, it's so great because I didn't realize that like these things are inherently my right. Like, this should be expected. And with Tamlin, like, I was so torn down, and I didn't even realize like how bad it was. So I like that her lack of choice and her lack of agency was actually addressed by her in this book. Can I also say that I love that they are saying that they do not want children and that they're going to wait for kids, because I feel like every single fantasy book, and I know this like pretty much started with like Twilight and stuff, but even before then, we always have like the characters not using magical birth control or whatever, and someone ends up getting pregnant, and it's just like, oh, now we're like basically newlyweds and we're gonna worry about being pregnant. And this book, they actually addressed like, we would love to have children one day, but now is not the time. And I'm like, thank you. We don't have to make everything about, you know, kids and like once you meet the perfect person you have to like have kids and like, no, doesn't need to happen at all. If we want to happen at some point, that's fine, but like we don't need to have it happen at the very beginning of a relationship or whatever. And they actually made the choice like to each other out loud, like, we're gonna start taking the tonic and we're not gonna have a kid right now because that would be a shit show. And like, thank you, bless. Okay, back around to the whole mating bond thing though, like, your OTP could never. It is, I had chills, like, it's so good. Like, even when he was describing everything from, like, his perspective from book 1, and just all the things that pointed to their mating bond like, throughout, because, like I said, I already knew it was gonna happen. It was foreshadowed pretty obviously, but it's just, like, they are so in tune, and, like, their, like, mind connection, and their support of each other, and everything, and then at the end, when, like, everything was going to complete shit, you have them being able to communicate without even, like, words to one another, and they had this plot where she pretends to save all of them because, like, humans are douchebags, and Tamlin's a douchebag, and everyone's a douchebag. Her and him fake the whole breaking of the mating bond so she can be a spider in the spring court and, like, take them down and destroy them, because she promised to destroy them if they hurt her sisters, which they did because they're all assholes, and she promises to destroy them. Like, your OTP could never. She's Persephone AF. I love her now, which is astounding because Feyre made like the top of my most hated protagonist last year, and now she's like one of my most favorite from this book. Like, what? She's amazing. And like, they're going to bring everybody down and like destroy everyone for hurting them, and like they're gonna protect the Court of Dreams, and they're gonna like protect their city and everything that is good in the world. I'm ready. The last thing I do want to point out that I didn't like really, and I had kind of a problem with this book, is that everybody is paired up. Which I think is ridiculous. Like, I just don't like when books do that, where like everybody is paired up with somebody and they're all paired up together. Like, it's not even like someone's paired up with like an outside character. Like, they're all paired up within their little like circle and stuff. It's just, it's a lot. Like, it's not necessary. Like, I just feel like I hate when, especially YA, or this is kind of like new adult, and obviously that's a point of contention with a lot of people, like, where does this really sit? But when you have books that are geared towards younger audiences, and you have every single character in a relationship, or, you know, hinted at in a relationship, or belonging with somebody else, you're just kind of like, people can, like, not be in relationships though too? Like, really? So we have Cassian with Nesta, Feyre and Rhys, obviously, Lucian and Elaine, which I kind of ship, obviously, but also just like, what? But I'm loving that, and I'm loving that we're bringing Lucian kind of back into the fold, because he also is being a total douche this book, and like, I know it wasn't his fault and he has a history of abuse, and like, I love him, but it's just like, oh, he was so great in book 1, like, he was one of my favorite characters in the whole book, and just to have him just be like this awful, you know, like, oh, character. But I'm pretty sure like she's gonna team up with him to help bring down the spring court, because he knows like everything's fucked up, and now that he has like his mate, and he needs to protect his mate, and like she will want to protect him as well, and all that kind of stuff, and he knows that things are like screwed up, and he knows that Tamlin's an asshole, and he like saw everything with the mating bond and stuff, and like how fucked up everything was. So I think he's gonna end up teaming up with her and like redeeming himself and how awful he was. Fingers crossed. And then my second favorite ship is Azriel and Mor. Like, I cannot. Like, I need them to be happy. I need them to be together. Like, oh my gosh, like, although I do kind of love the triad that's between Mor, Azriel, and Cassian, like, whatever, even though he's gonna end up being with, like, Nesta. But we could have had this really great polyamorous relationship, so the fact that that was denied is, like, really sad for me. But I need Azriel and Mor to be together. Like, they're so great. They're so great, and he's so great, and she's so great, and they're so great together, and they're so protective of one another, and their family, and they're just great. I just love them. And the last one, which is borderline the most ridiculous one, is Amren and Varian from the Summer Court, which is just kind of like, what? Like, of all people who didn't need a relationship, it's Amren. Like, I love her, and I want her to be happy and whatever, but like, we don't need a hinted, like, anything with it. Come on. Like, stop. So, everyone's paired up with somebody with a character that has an actual name. Like, everybody. It's a little ridiculous, but like, do I ship all of it? Yes. Like, duh. I am shipper trash. I have an armada of ships just in this book. Like, I'm here for it, but I'm also like, that is a problem. Like, you shouldn't, not everyone needs to be paired up. Like, I have a problem with that, but I'm also just like, I also love it though, so it's fine. So overall, obviously, I love this book as a contained book. I think I'm also going to love the last book in the series. Like, I'm basically treating this series as a duology. I'm never reading ACOTAR again. I'm pretending it doesn't exist. I do not like it. But this book is important to me, and the next book is probably going to be important to me. Like, I love all of my children in here. It's really great. Like I said, I do have standing issues with Sarah J. Maas's writing. Like, if she had only written this book, I'd be like, she's amazing. But there's a lot of things that she does where she has very little diversity in her stories. Like, seriously. Does everyone have to be straight in this? Like, no. We have a lot of characters. Does everyone have to be straight? They don't. Does everyone have to be white or, like, tan? And there will be some arguments, I know, where this like, oh, they're like people of color. Like, the Night Court is, like, supposed to be tan. They're, like, described as, like, golden, which is basically white people with a tan. Like, come on. If you want to actually make your characters, like, blatantly people of color, like, describe them blatantly as people of color. Like, they're not described that way at all. Like, seriously, they're not. So, that's an issue. Like, yes, there are some of the characters that are described as darker skinned, some of the other courts, and blah, 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 but they're so minor, and it's just, like, do better. Like, you have all these characters, and you could just do better, and I'm just like, you know? And just the fact that, like, some of the Night Court fashions and stuff are very blatantly taken from, like, Middle Eastern inspired, and you're making the characters just be, like, borderline, like, tan, because they got white under the mountain, right? Like, they were so pale from being under the mountain, like, no matter what, a person of color isn't going to be completely white. They're just not. So, I have a problem with that. I don't like that. Again, just lack of diversity in fantasy novels bothers me because you don't need to have it that way. Fantasy novels do not be based on our world or anything, or our, you know, depictions of beauty or anything like that. So, like, stop doing that, and, like, fantasy writers, not even Sarah J. Maas, just, like, fantasy writers in general, do better. We're getting better, but do better. So that's the thing, and just, like, everyone doesn't have to be straight. So, yeah. But ultimately, overall, as a freestanding, separate from her first book in the series, and separate from, like, Throne of Glass and the issues that I have with that series and everything, loved this book. On its own, 5 out of 5 stars. Adored it. As a book that had a transition from the first book, and some of the other issues and stuff, 4 out of 5 stars. But overall, loved it. I've been reblogging stuff constantly on Tumblr from this series, so if you want to talk to me about feelings about this book, and see all the pretty, like, photo sets and stuff, and all of the feelings that I have, follow me on Tumblr. It's linked down below, because that's where I just gush over and over about the series that I love. And I've been talking about this book a lot. I actually was even live vlogging a little bit about reading this, and it was an experience. People really liked it, I think, because I went from being like, I'm not sure about this book, to being like, I love it, my children, they're great, oh my god. So, yes. Begrudgingly love this book. I am Hades Persephone trash. This has proven it completely. It's right on my gravestone. Hades Persephone trash. So comment down below, let me know what you thought of A Court of Mist and Fury. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye!